from Sichas Aram. It's a very good short. We have actually at home Rabbi Nachman's Wisdom. It's a book. Rabbi Nachman's like sayings, different things that he said. It's very good.
Yeah.
So he says here that Emunah, believing in Hashem, is like light. According to Ve'emunah, sometimes people come to Emunah, come to believe in Hashem, through like study of either a proof.
Okay.
Like they prove, like in Eshet Torah, they prove Hashem, or they even learn the Torah and they see through the Torah that they prove Hashem, so to speak, through learning Torah.
Yeah.
Through understanding the Torah, it must be that Hashem is true, right? These are ways that you could prove the Torah. There are other ways to prove the Torah. These are some ways, and these are very nice. If a person comes to Hashem through one of these proofs, then it's very good. But it's not the main thing. The main thing is simple faith. So even simple faith, it seems like there's no such thing as simple faith, because if you have simple faith, why doesn't a person go off to believe in every religion in the whole world?
Yeah.
Right? So you have to have faith that's based on truth. What does that mean? Is that our faith, Torah, is based on truth. That a whole nation, like we have a tradition from our parents, from our great-grandparents, that they were there and they were in Egypt and they all left. And they passed on the information. They passed on these facts.
Every Jew in Egypt.
Yeah, all the nation of the Jewish people, every one of the Jewish people were in Egypt and they all left. And they passed this down to their children. They taught their children generation after generation that this is what happened to all of us, right? All the rest of the religions are one person who had an idea or one person who had a dream, and he went to tell everyone else, and he said, hey, God tells us that really now the Jewish people are not the Jewish people anymore, now it's us. So there's a lot of problems with that you're just believing in that one person.
How about Buddhism?
All of them is based, every single religion is based on one person, and if it has many people involved in the religion, then they're not coming to tell you.
In Christianity,
yeah, it's all one person. And even that, it wasn't even him. It was even later. Every single one of them is one person saying, in my own little room, in my own little head, I had some kind of vision or some kind of dream. Even if that person does miracles, so there's a lot of witchcraft, there's a lot of miracles that don't prove, doesn't just because a person does a miracle doesn't mean that he's messaging from Hashem.
It was like from the beginning of time.
It was from the beginning of time, but more than that, it was God did bigger miracles than he ever in the whole world. No person ever saw such great miracles like taking one nation.
Like, the rock story, right? Of Jesus.
What?
It was like why they believe in Christian, why they do church.
Because he walked on water.
And no, I heard it was because they put him in like a boulder or something. They like ran him over with a boulder.
Yeah.
And they put a rock on him, and there was one Sunday, I think hundreds of years later, they took off the rock, and then he wasn't there anymore. So they said he's like the Messiah. Because he's not there anymore under the rock.
The funny thing is, the reason why they believe in a Sunday instead of Shabbos, even though it says explicitly in the Torah that you keep Shabbos, it's like why they changed to do Sunday, is because one of the rabbis saw that Christianity used to be a very sect of Judaism almost. What? It used to be people used to get rid of Jewish people. It started off with Jewish people.
So is it possible that Christian people are really Jewish?
Some of them, yeah. Some of them for sure could be. Because there are a lot of Jews that could be sprinkled out throughout the non-Jews that we don't even know they're Jewish anymore.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Americans don't even know they're Jewish anymore, and they're Jewish because their great-grandmothers were Jewish on the mother's side. So it could be. But what happened was that the Pope, after a few generations after Jesus, the Pope, one of the Jewish rabbis saw that it was too close to the Jewish religion. Like conservatism and reform is very close to the Jewish religion, although it's not Judaism, right?
How is that close?
It's close because
what are they believing? I don't understand what they claim.
They just say whatever you could do. In short, you don't have to listen to the rabbis.
But what's their claim? Why? Do they believe in listening to the Torah?
No, you don't have to do the way you could interpret. They believe in you interpret the Torah the way you want to.
No, but what's their whole ideology?
Why
do they say that?
That's the idea. It's a free world. I don't know. I'm not exactly I'm not so clear on what they say.
I heard they claim that. Some reform kid from my class told me one time. He's like, we believe that because we're not in the times of the Torah, the same laws don't apply.
Okay, they have a lot of a lot of different things they could believe and feel,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But basically, they say that for whatever reason, I don't believe in. I don't have to go by what the Torah says. For whatever
Yeah.
reason, they come up with logical, scientific reasons for the mitzvahs, and then since nowadays it doesn't apply. Like pig, they say we used to be dangerous because people used to eat it with it had worms in it or something like that, and nowadays we cook it really well. It's not dangerous anymore. It's kosher. All sorts of other ridiculous, completely wrong approaches to the Torah. That is not Torah. That's not the way Torah is meant to be learned, and that's not what Torah is about. So what happened was that it was like conservative and reform, where people were starting to do strange things inside the Jewish religion, and it was part of they're trying to get Jewish people. So what one of the rabbis did was he went over to be the Pope,
Yeah.
and he said, "I'm a believer in Jesus. I'm a believer in
What?
This is what he said. He did this to save the Jewish people, and in general, you're not allowed to do this. It's a complete sin to say that you believe in Jesus or whatever it is. Maybe he did it in a way that was kosher. Maybe back then it didn't need so much. And what he did was he did miracles because he knew magical Kabbalah, and he did miracles, and everyone believed in him because of the miracles that he did. And this is a big mistake. Just because a person does miracles doesn't mean that he's kosher. Because a lot of witches and a lot of evil people and a lot of people that are a mixture of good and evil that could do miracles. You could do miracles through the power of your soul. Jewish people and non-Jewish people have powerful souls that could do miracles. Go to India, go to Africa, you'll see all sorts of different types of spiritual practices that bring all sorts of different miracles into the world.
Yeah.
Miracles aren't proof of anything.
Well, so what do they mean?
It just means that they have a powerful soul. It could be they're doing it through illegal methods, like through demons or through other other not kosher means. That's just how miracles work. It doesn't mean that it's a good thing. It doesn't mean that it's for real. It doesn't mean that God tells you. Just because someone comes into our room and say, God told me that today you have to that this Shabbos we're not going to do Shabbos, and we could drive on this Saturday. It's okay to drive. And he does a miracle. He flips his hat, and his hat disappears, or pulls a rabbit out of the hat. I don't know. And a real miracle. There really was no rabbit in the hat. And he actually made a rabbit, right? You don't listen to him. There are rules. If he's a prophet, you're allowed to listen to him. A prophet has to be proven prophet. He can't just be a person coming in. He has to be able to say certain things. If he's saying things that they go against the Torah completely to change the Torah, you don't believe in him, even if he's a real prophet. That means even if a real prophet, let's say Shmuel HaNavi, Shmuel the prophet, Samuel the prophet, one of the greatest prophet after Moshe Rabbeinu, after Moses, if he were to come and tell us that we don't keep Shabbos anymore and we move Saturday to Sunday, then we don't listen to him. That means even though I know he's a real prophet, there are rules about who we listen to and how we listen to him. So this guy, this rabbi, who's a big rabbi, he went over to the Christians and he says, I am the prophet, I speak to Jesus, and I'm...
What?
That's what he said. And he did this, why? He did this in order to get in, and one of the things that he did was he changed, I think he was the one that gave this whole story about...
The Rock?
I don't know if it was The Rock, he gave the whole story about where they're allowed to eat treif, not kosher food. He said...
Why? Because they're eating kosher.
They were eating kosher, yeah. They were
They're
doing the
not allowed.
laws in the Torah.
They're not allowed?
Listen, Jews are not allowed. Non-Jews are allowed. What he wanted to do is he wanted to separate the two.
Wait, Jews are not allowed, non-Jews are allowed to keep kosher?
Non-Jews are allowed to keep not kosher. Jews are not allowed to eat not kosher. A Jew has to eat kosher food.
Christianity used to eat...
Used to eat kosher. They used to do what it says in the Torah.
So why is that a problem?
So what the problem was that they were too close to us. Christianity was like conservative and reform, which was getting a lot of religious people to be involved in their group.
Really?
Yeah, and it was wrong. It was bad things. So since they were taking good
Would
religious
they keep Shabbat and stuff?
Somewhat, maybe, yeah, to a certain extent. Maybe like the Karaites, they only did what was written. But for whatever reason, maybe they did even more than that. Maybe they did all the traditional things that we did. Maybe they did everything. But whatever it was, there were some really bad problems that were going on. It was not a kosher
Who are the Karaites? Catholics?
Karaites are people that believe, I think that's the people that believe only in the written Torah. Not anything the rabbis say. What's written is written, anything else, they don't listen to it.
I don't know, it's not bad.
It's very bad.
Really?
It's very bad because
Why?
the Torah was given in two parts. Torah, the oral Torah and the written Torah. Most of the Torah is oral. Not
Really?
written.
Oral Torah is the rabbi?
Yes, oral Torah is what the rabbis passed on from generation to generation, including how to learn the written Torah, including how to interpret the written Torah, including things that weren't written in the written Torah were given to Moses and passed on as the body of Torah.
Yeah.
So Torah is two parts. Torah is the private key, the secret key, and the public key. If you want without the other, it's a joke.
Yeah.
You know, if you have it, these things are the private one was oral because it was not meant to be written down. It was not meant to be given out to the
It
non-Jews.
was meant to be oral though.
It was meant to be oral. It was meant to be learned in an oral way. And because the generations went down and got weaker, and our brains got weaker, we had to write it down. We had to write it down. Now it's a mitzvah. It's a good thing for us to write it down. And the more we write it down, the better. So things have changed in that way, and we're allowed. And the rabbi said, now you're allowed to write down the Torah. And as the generations go by, there are more and more things that we're writing down. For example, secrets of Torah were not written down until a few hundred years ago. And now, since we're getting lower and lower and farther, and that's one of the reasons, and another reason is that it's important for us to be learning the secrets of Torah for our generation, so secrets of Torah also being written down.
Yeah.
And now there's basically very, very little that shouldn't be written down. Now, the more you write down, the better. But what happened is that, so oral Torah, written Torah is very, very little of the oral Torah. Most of the laws are not written in the written Torah. Most of the laws are in the oral Torah. And even the laws themselves that are written in the written Torah, they're only explained and the details are there in the oral Torah. So it's like you really can't make your whole religion based on the written Torah. It's not. That's just false. It's not true.
Yeah.
God gave over our teachings, are written and oral. There are a few proofs for that inside the Torah itself.
Hashem gave people what to do in the oral Torah.
What do you mean?
Is it from Hashem, the oral Torah?
The oral Torah is from Hashem, exactly. Yes, from Hashem. No, you have to understand.
Hashem gave it to somebody.
He gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu
Really?
taught it over, yes.
The whole oral Torah?
The whole oral Torah. However, after Moshe Rabbeinu died, after he passed away, the people started forgetting. They're forgetting details of the oral Torah. So what happened was, two things happened. One is, they had to use a new method to reinstate the laws that they forgot. One of that was through logical means of study. If you take the oral Torah that was written down, that we had, that we knew, and the written Torah, we had methodologies of interpreting the laws and reinstating the laws, or recreating, or figuring out the laws based on the oral Torah that we have, which was basically the Mishnah. The Mishnah was like the short, concise code of the oral Torah. And the principles of the written Torah that we have, the 13 principles of extrapolating new ideas out of the written Torah. These were principles that the rabbis had in order to, if they forgot something, they could reinstate they could figure out the laws of what they forgot.
Yeah.
So what started happening after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away right away is people started forgetting. What they had to do is they had to use logic to reinstate the laws. Now one thing, when you come to logic, one thing is that sometimes there's division of opinions. When you come to logic, there are two ways sometimes to interpret the logical, to approach through logic to approach the Torah. So we don't necessarily know which way, the way that Moshe Rabbeinu taught logically, or the way Moshe Rabbeinu taught the people. However, we have a rule that law is now the final word of law is given over to human beings, to the rabbis of the time, to instate the law. That means that if we forgot a law, we have to use the principles of the Torah as best as we can to try to come to a conclusion of what the law must be. If there's an argument, we go by most of the rabbis.
But it was written in detail in the oral Torah and we forgot.
Absolutely, written in detail.
Why did we well, how come after one generation that we almost
less than one
forgot?
generation is very deep. The Torah is
How
very,
come
very deep.
we almost forgot and why didn't we just write it down?
So we weren't allowed to write it down, and we had to if anything we want to relearn something, we had to relearn it, so to speak, from the source. And the source is only the written Torah and the teaching, the oral Torah that we do know, that we do remember. Because they remembered 90%. If you forget 50%, it's like cracking a code. Let's say I forgot 50%, let's say I forgot 10% of my, or 1% of my code. Let's say I have a combination lock with four places for numbers, right? What happens if I forget the last combination? What do I do? For the last number, I don't remember what the last number is. There's a way to logically test each one of them, and then whichever one opens up, that's the one, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, the Torah is reinstated, and then you remember what the code was, right? Do you understand?
Exactly.
So similarly, the Torah can be reinstated in such a fashion. Something kind of similar. What we do is we test the ideas logically against. We have principles and ways, methodologies of doing this, and there's a whole system to how the Torah is reinstated. That system was taught over to us. Not only the simple laws, do this and do that, and do this and do that, but actually the system of the Torah, meaning the way that you could refigure out that last combination lock. The last number on the combination. That was also given to us. So since these principles were given to us, we were able to reinstate. This is the Torah that the rabbis teach today. This is the Torah that the principles of the rabbis that we learn today. We're learning the same principles that Moshe Rabbeinu taught. However, some of these principles also have been lost, and there are certain rules for how we are able to interpret the Torah today, and the things that we're not able to do anymore today. But there has been a lot more that's been written down, so it's a lot easier for us. So there's less leeway in one sense. In another sense, there's more written down. This is the study of the oral Torah the way the traditional rabbis have today. We have a methodology from the time of Moses, from the time that has been passed down and developed according to the generation and taught according to the oral tradition of the rabbis till today. And this is something that is very, very clear. If you study it, you'll see there's a progression from the teachings of the Mishnah, which is the similar teachings to what Moshe Rabbeinu taught his students, down to the teachings of the Gemara, which is also similar in some senses, but a little bit maybe less similar to exactly the words and the way that they used to learn in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. And then the Rishonim, the earlier authorities, and the Achronim, the later authorities. And each one is going in the previous one's footsteps, and each one is clarifying the Torah in the way that they have ability. So this is something you have to learn inside to see how...
Why couldn't you write it down? Why is it oral?
So one of the real reasons, one of the main reasons, one of the deep reasons, is that it's very vast. It will always be oral, in a sense, that you can't really quantify it and say anymore and say this is it. You can't say it, and there have been 2 times when they did that. It's called the sealing of the Mishnah. When they sealed the Mishnah, they said this is the Mishnah, meaning there are levels of code. For example, if you're on the computers, you have the server and you have the client, right? The server is the big computer that has all the information. It's going to send out and deal with all the client computers that are going to try to come to them. The Mishnah is kind of like the server in the sense that it's closed. You're not going to access, the client is not going to access and reprogram the server. The server was programmed as, we call that in a sense, it's just a comparison, just compared to computer programming, is like a certain level of programming that you're not going to have access to anymore. That was closed. Once the Mishnah was closed, that happened at the time of Rebbe, shortly after the Second Temple, destruction of the Second Temple. This means that nobody anymore can redefine a law on that level. It's kind of like nobody can access the server anymore to reprogram the server. Okay. However, we could still, on the client level, we could program. Now, after a while, even the client level, in a sense, has been closed. I'm just using as levels of being closed in a sense. And now we could program certain scripts and certain things we could write on the user side. That the user could still have access to the client, computer, and reprogram certain scripts to test out certain things and to develop certain things. However, there's a certain level that has been closed also then. This is the sealing of the Gemara. These 2 levels have been sealed completely, which means that we cannot change anything written in the Gemara or anything written in the Mishnah. However, things written from then on, there was nothing that was sealed and nothing that was closed. Still, it's accepted. We have to understand where we hold, and that we have to understand that we really can't argue on the major body of early authorities. Authorities from a few hundred years ago have kind of, it is accepted that just like the Gemara has sealed a certain methodology in oral Torah, so too the earlier authorities have, so to speak, sealed, even though it's not official sealing, it's not a sin to try to argue against the earlier authorities, but it is a breach in the methodology of the Torah. It's not exactly the same type of sealing, and that we can't argue in a sense on the earlier authorities. Yeah. Where exactly those earlier authorities apply and where they don't is a discussion inside the later the modern day
Reform.
For example, modern Orthodoxy, for example, they say certain levels of modern Orthodoxy, not all of them. They say anything after the closing of the Gemara is free for all. anyone can say whatever you want, and I don't have to pay attention too much to the earlier authorities. I read them carefully. And
Well, like, what do they say after the Gemara?
So after the Gemara, everyone agrees.
Like, what kind of laws do they say?
So though what they might do is I don't know, I'm not so familiar with what they do, but there are rabbis, and some that are not even modern Orthodox, some even Orthodox, but this is not accepted, and I don't do this, and I believe it is wrong to go in this methodology. And this is what I learned from all my rabbis, and it's something that's very clear from all the Orthodox groups, that we don't do this, that there is a certain type of acceptance of the earlier authorities that we must accept. Meaning, if you see most of the earlier authorities go in a certain way, we aren't allowed, even though you think that Gemara is like the minority of those earlier authorities, I feel like that one rabbi who was, let's say, a Tosfos or a Rashi or something like that, who said something very extreme, very different, I think that's the correct way to learn the Gemara. But all the other earlier authorities, all the other Rishonim they're called, they all said something different. So there's a discussion whether I'm allowed to go, because I feel like that opinion is correct, that minority opinion, am I allowed to go like that minority opinion? This is a discussion, it's a very elaborate discussion inside.
So you're saying modern Orthodox believes in that?
Modern Orthodox would more be open to the idea.
I don't feel like that's what I feel like modern Orthodox just doesn't care.
Well, it comes because there is an
No,
association.
they do care actually. Like,
They
keep Shabbat.
Yeah,
like, it's a big thing.
there is a certain.
People
There's different. Now, modern Orthodox has developed a lot in the past, and they.
Like, what do they believe in? I don't know.
I don't know. What I do. One of the things I know about modern Orthodoxy is that they have this idea that they can argue, even sometimes argue on all the Rishonim. That means that after the Gemara, if all the earlier authorities explain the Gemara in a certain way, which means that a certain thing, let's say a woman has to cover her hair. Let's say let's give an example.
Right?
I don't know the details of this law, and I'm just throwing this as I'm not using. I'm just giving an example. Everyone knows modern Orthodox people do go around with uncovered hair. Orthodox people all cover their hair. It's a law that we have to abide by, and it's not just it's not something that you're allowed to play games with. So modern Orthodox people,
they don't care about the women rules. A lot of them.
Listen. There's a new modern Orthodox that really may be closer to conservative or reform, which is something much worse.
It's not new. It's like what modern.
The way modern Orthodoxy, I don't know how. I can't speak for modern Orthodoxy, and I don't really want to. It's a waste of time to get too into it, because there are many opinions that we don't believe in. The main thing is we have to have respect and we have to have understanding that the earlier authorities in the Talmud and the ones who already decided the law, that we can't just throw them out and say, hey, I don't learn the Gemara.
I thought they throw away the later authorities.
The earlier authorities. I'm referring to as earlier authorities. Anyone after Gemara.
Oh.
So they could push them all aside.
How long ago?
The Gemara was sealed shortly after the destruction. More after the destruction of. It was after. Yeah.
Wasn't there it was written in destructions or something like that?
It was written maybe I'm not sure exactly when. 400 years after the Beis Hamikdash.
Wasn't there two destructions or something like that?
Yeah, two temples.
Really?
Yeah. So this is after the second temple.
Both of them got destroyed.
Both got destroyed. The same place.
Why?
This is what we weren't worthy of having it. Now the third one will not be destroyed.
Really?
Yeah.
And where does it say?
Third one will not be destroyed. It's brought down in I don't remember exactly what the sources in the.
I heard they found a couple of years ago. They dug up out of the ground. They found this thing from like this box that was supposed to be like something they used from the Beit Hamikdash.
It could be they find also.
But it was like a state emergency, and like they had to dig it back up in the ground. You could look it up. They took a photo. It was like extremely sealed package, like inside the ground.
And
yeah.
They didn't open it?
No, they said they weren't allowed. The rabbis from Israel said you're not allowed or something like that. They said you have to put it back.
Huh. Interesting. Well, listen, I mean, if they find the Aron Kodesh, for example, the Aron Kodesh is the Ark. If they find the Holy Ark, if it's the golden box.
Yeah, that's what they.
I don't believe that they found it.
Why?
I don't believe it because if they found it, what basically it would do is it would prove conclusively. Well, let me just tell you what's inside the box. Inside the box is the Torah scroll that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote.
Yeah, that's what they said they found. I think that's.
I have a hard time believing it. I'll look it up afterwards or whatever it is. But inside the box is the first and the second tablets. The ones that he broke and the ones that he didn't break, and the scroll that was written inside. Now, one of the things that it would do is it would probably prove the existence, the facts of the Torah, because this is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, wrote in his own hand the words of the Torah, and rolled it up in a scroll and put it inside the box. And that's the one that's sitting today inside the Holy Ark.
Huh.
Do you understand?
Sitting in the
Also,
Holy Ark.
yes, inside the Holy Ark.
Today?
Yes. Also, there's a
Where's
few.
the Holy Ark?
So
Oh, it's the box.
some say
you're
it was
saying?
taken to Rome, and some say it was hidden. I think it was hidden inside. I'm pretty sure that it was hidden inside the inside somewhere under in the temple itself, in that area where they're digging, that type of place. So it is possible, theoretically, they could find it. I think that the one that was taken, the ark that was taken to Rome, was a fake one, so to speak. They were tricked into a fake one. The real one was hidden away.
I don't want to make up facts here, yeah, but I heard a lot of stuff about it when my rabbi showed it to me from school a couple of years ago.
But the box is pretty big. And now another thing is there's constant miracles. If you see that box, you'll see there are two angels on the box.
Yeah.
And if the Jewish people, if Hashem is happy with the Jewish people, the two angels are facing each other, and their wings are facing each other. Their wings are out like this.
I heard it was concealed. It's super.
It has to be big, and it's made out of gold. I mean, it's not easy to conceal. We're talking about, I think it's, it's this high. I think maybe an amma. I can't remember if it's 3 ammas high or it's 1 amma high.
I don't know,
One amma is like
big.
this high, this wide,
That's very cool.
and this big. With big long metal sticks. Even if they put those sticks away, which I don't think they're allowed.
Isn't it near to try to find these things?
No, I'd probably be a mitzvah to try to find it. I don't think it'd be an avera. I don't think it'd be an avera. I'm not telling you what to do, but it's not. don't think
Interesting,
it's
no? You don't feel like it's like proving really cool things that like,
It would be a mitzvah probably to find it.
even though they already are pretty much proven.
Yeah, these things. Listen, no matter what you do, you're still. I don't think it's going to prove anything to anyone almost, because they're always the conservative and the reformer going to say,
No,
yeah,
but
they're going to say whatever they want. They're always going to say something. People that don't want to believe aren't going to
They're
believe.
probably gonna get scared, you know.
Even if they saw a miracle, even if they would say, oh, it's some kind of alien technology. Well, they're going to say something. It doesn't make a difference. Look, what happens is, if Hashem is not happy with the Jewish people, what happens is that the angels actually turn to back like this. And their wings face away from each other. So that one angel will face this way with his wings that way. Now, if they were to see such a thing, if they were to see that the angel's facing away one time or facing in another time, if they would see it's not real, or if they actually would catch it on camera, nowadays that could also be faked, then they would say, really, they would just say, you know what?
They're fake. You can't trust anything anymore. You saw
deep fakes. Yeah, it's like you could go online, you can make your own deep fakes. You can't trust anything. And
I could be you.
Right, it makes it really difficult in this world to. This is what's going to happen in the end of times. Deep fakes is a very important idea. That deep fakes is the idea of infinity, is that you can make infinite amount of fake things. This idea that fake lying, you could say as many lies as you want about something, but the truth is only one. So what's going to happen really is at the end is there are going to be so many lies that somehow the truth is going to come out to be real.
Yeah.
There's so many fakes and there's so many bad things that people are going to only start looking for the truth, and somehow they're going to find it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
It's going to have to happen.
When?
That's by the time Mashiach comes, it's going to happen.
Who said?
That's what the Torah teaches. The Torah teaches that what happens is that good is always more powerful than evil, right? Always. Just like there's infinite fakes, that we're getting to a point where we get infinite depth in truth. That means that if you could have infinite amount of lies, there must also be parallel to that a certain type of Torah, a certain type of holiness that can also have infinite amounts of power. And we're reaching that is as the secular world reaches it, also the religious world reaches it, and really the Jewish world and Jewish power has to be a drop stronger than the
But
secular.
you could really just do teshuvah for anything and you never. What if you forgot?
It doesn't make a difference if you forgot. The Zohar says very explicitly that if you if you sinned, I'll say a certain thing, and you totally forgot that you ever did that thing. So then when you do tshuva on everything else, that thing that you forgot about is put inside and you get tshuva on that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Zohar says explicitly. The Zohar says that just like when you search for bread...
Teshuvah is when you do a sin, not when you don't do it a mitzvah, right?
Both. If you don't do a mitzvah,
No,
you're supposed to do
I
it.
didn't learn Torah all day yesterday. Like, I went to the co-working center. Why do I have to do teshuvah?
No, you don't have to do tshuva.
Like, I'm gonna do it again. Like, I'm
No,
not.
you don't have to do tshuva. Like, learning Torah is something that's very personal. How much Torah you have to learn? You have to learn as much Torah as you can. What that means is something up to you to decide based on who you are and based on what your goal, how you're coming close to Hashem. You can't overburn out, and you have to keep yourself balanced. And so Torah is something that's a very, very limitless type of mitzvah that you have to know how you're going to do it and not to do too much, even though you have a mitzvah to do it all times. However, if, let's just say, someone comes in and wakes you up and you slept enough and you're just flopping in bed and you're like, I'm just not going to learn Torah this morning for a couple hours. Then what happens is then you have to do tshuva on that. Because you really should. Let's just say in the morning,
Oh,
one
fine.
morning you really should have woken up, and you know you should have woken up. And you're like, I'll be okay. I'll just sleep in, and it'll be okay. Maybe I'll learn tomorrow. That's a sin. Meaning something that you know you should be doing, and you aren't doing it. A Torah that you know you should be learning, you should be going to that class. You should be doing that thing, and you aren't doing it. That's your problem. However, it's not your problem when you know that your day is supposed to be broken up. Let's say 50% learning, 50% working, or something like that. That's already. Then you're going to be only. You have to make sure that you do your Torah. Your Torah is very important. Don't minimize your Torah. And that you could be punished even for not doing a positive mitzvah. Also, now we're talking about punishment, but you have to do tshuva. Also, when putting on tefillin, for example. Put tefillin on every day. Like, it doesn't hurt. It takes about 5
I
minutes.
want to, yeah. I don't have it in the office even.
Oh, come to my house and pick it up.
Fine.
You know, you can wear my tefillin if you don't have... I have tefillin here.
Good?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll wait.
Yeah, you come to the house. You should wear
They haven't
left-
talked to Marquez. Maybe I'll go.
Yeah, the most important thing is step by step, try to make a commitment to try to take a step up. That means if you aren't used to putting on tefillin every day, so you
Hurt my
say
wrist, honestly.
from putting on tefillin,
No, from pull-ups.
it's not worth hurting yourself physically for a temporary. You
I
have to be
know.
careful. You have to be careful. So you know, like whatever you're holding, don't go down. Try to take a step up. A gentle, comfortable step up. That means if you're not used to putting on tefillin every day, start by making sure you put on tefillin every day. Afterwards, start by saying, let's say, the morning brachos. Afterwards, like every day, the way you make a commitment, you start doing it. Start by, saying Shemona Esrei, or saying Shema. When you put on tefillin, it's good to say Shema. The prayer, all the prayers are from the rabbis, except for Shema.
Really?
Shema is from the Torah.
Really?
Yeah. That we have to say Shema once in the morning and once at night. Without tefillin at night, obviously.
So it's the oral Torah, everything else, basically?
Yeah, but it doesn't make it any easier because we said before that the oral Torah is one of the commandments in the written Torah.
I thought Ashrei was from
No.
they flew from the sky or something like that.
Ashrei, it could be. I don't remember hearing that story, but Ashrei, all the Tehillim is from, we call it written Torah. It's part of the written Torah.
Yeah.
We don't have to say all Tehillim every day. You have to say Shema once in the morning, the 3 paragraphs of Shema once in the morning and once at night. That's a mitzvah from the Torah. You have to put on tefillin every morning. That's a mitzvah from the Torah. The rest, the mitzvah of
Or maybe it
Shemona
was
Esrei-
Baruch Shamar, which
It
one?
could be Baruch Shamar. It sounds
Yeah.
familiar. But the mitzvah of davening, let's say Shemona Esrei, where we daven with our feet together, that is our rabbis told us to do it 3 times a
What?
day. Yeah, it's not
How-
from the Torah.
How a rabbi was that holy to the whole Jewish nation to do that?
Well, it was all the rabbis. It was the whole group of rabbis at the time of the
Really?
temple, basically.
At the time of it.
Around the time of Beis Hamikdash, around the time, or after the destruction. So
It's crazy how
they
they even
set
got to that point.
they set up a prayer because it used to be that people used
So
to pray.
honestly, they went from 0 to 1. They didn't take they didn't take an old idea and improve. They made like a new.
No, it's not true. No, it's not true because people used to
Really?
pray.
No, I'm saying it's a good thing.
People used to pray privately. It says Avram Avinu, he set up shachars. He set up davening in the morning. Avram Avinu.
Himself.
He set it for himself, and he instituted it. Means that Jewish people used to pray in the morning from Avram Avinu. The set prayers, the way we have it today, the words that we have today, is something that was instituted by very early authorities, very very early, way before the Gemara. That's something that we have to do it. It's a rabbinical enactment. It's a rabbinical obligation. So it's not
Who's a rabbi? Like, what does it mean to be a rabbi?
Right. So in those days, in our generation, it's very loosely termed. For example, I've been ordained to be a rabbi.
So,
But I've been
Yeah.
ordained to be a rabbi for kiruv purposes. That means for bringing people in to teaching them about Hashem. I'm not a rabbi that can decide law of
How do you
of
become
milk and
a
meat.
rabbi?
You get a paper. You go to a rabbi and you basically take it's like getting a bachelor's degree or getting a GED.
When you try to do that?
I could. I was studying for a while. Like I could have gone for the paper. I didn't. I didn't.
Do you know rabbis that are able to do that?
I know rabbis that don't have the paper that are much smarter than the rabbis who have the paper. To have a paper, you study for about 6 to 9 months. If I were to study for about 9, I already went through most of the topics that I need to go through. But if I were to study for about 3 to 6 months, probably I could finish up my degree in rabbiness to get a paper that would allow me to decide milk and meat laws. Milk and meat laws,
Really?
So yeah, in general, you have to. It's a very loose type of thing
There's
nowadays.
no paper that you can make up your own.
You don't need a paper. You don't really need a paper. My rabbis gave me official what is it called? Rabbi.
Milk and meat. Oh yeah, why can we eat chicken again?
Why can't we?
Chicken and dairy.
We can't eat chicken and dairy. It's that people might get confused between meat and
But
chicken.
it's a sin?
Yeah.
What? Really?
Rabbana. It's from the Rabbana. It's from
If
the
your
rabbis.
door is locked and your window.
Anytime, look, when the rabbis say you can't do something, it becomes in heaven, in your soul, it becomes a mitzvah to do that and a sin not to do it. Let's say if they say not to do something,
Really?
if they say to do it, it's actually it works on on you.
I don't
Works
think
inside
that
of
it's such an easy mitzvah to do. So.
Say one of the mitzvahs
Oh,
inside the Torah.
Orthodox, for example, they don't wait 6 hours; they wait 3.
So that's the difference of truth. There is a custom to wait 3. Many people wait 3.
And it's not an avera.
You must do you should do what your parents do, in general, or keep 6 hours or 5.5.
What if your parents don't keep it?
So if they don't keep it, you should ask your local Orthodox rabbi. I will tell you that it says clearly in the Shulchan Aruch, the later authorities say that a person who cares about doing the right thing should keep 6. However, they clearly recognize a tradition down to 1. There are some people who keep even just 1 hour.
Some people.
That's the smallest
And
tradition.
you could eat
that
dairy,
is left.
then meat and chicken.
You could eat dairy and then meat and chicken. You have
But
to
you
wash
have
your
to
mouth out.
wash your mouth
Or
and
you
eat a
have to
piece
eat
of
something,
bread.
or
Yeah.
a piece of bread, or both, whatever. It depends on what it is. And these again, I learned these laws. I'm not telling you what the law exactly is. I'm not passing it for you, but that's what. So there are 2 different traditions about that, and it depends on what your tradition is. I used to wait 4 hours, and I spoke to my rabbi, and they said we should wait 6 hours, and they said 6 hours means basically 5.5 hours. 5.5 hours is considered 6. So I personally wait 5.5 hours between milk and meat, and that's what I was told that basically every good religious person should be doing.
Why is 5.5 considered 6?
5 hours considered because it says in some places like 6 hours,
Yeah.
and 5.5 is like most of the 6th hour. It's 5 full hours plus most of the 6 hours. That's like 6 hours. I think that's where they're coming from, and that's enough to to be like 6 hours. Not something that's exactly 6 hours. So 5.5 is good enough. I would suggest anyone who doesn't have, if you're not going to ask a rabbi, you should do 5.5. Unless you have a specific tradition to do something less. 3 is a normal tradition. 4 is a very strange tradition.
Well,
Very, very
strange,
rare.
right?
Very rare. Most people do either 3 or full 6, or some people do also 1
some
Very
people
few.
do it together
together.
in a sandwich.
That's not kosher at all. Oh, that's forbidden.
How about fish and dairy?
Fish and dairy is a tradition. Sephardi, I don't know if all Sephardim, but Sephardi people are much more careful about it.
They're strict about it.
Ashkenazi,
I did it one time. They told me I'm not supposed to or something like
Ashkenazi
that.
people do it without, most Ashkenazim do it without any problem.
They
They
go
say it's a
off,
mistake. They say it's a mistake.
Who says
There's
mistake?
There's a discussion in the later authorities in the poskim whether fish and dairy is okay, and some
Why
say
wouldn't it be?
it's written. There's something written about it that says that fish and dairy is not okay, and other authorities say that whoever wrote that, it was a mistake in the writing. It was supposed to be fish and meat, not fish and dairy. Someone got meat mixed up with milk. That's what they say as a joke. Someone got meat mixed up with milk because he wrote milk instead of meat. He should have written meat. But he wrote milk with fish. He was supposed to write meat with fish. And someone said...
Why would it really?
So in general, the Sephardic approach, and I don't know if all Sephardim are like this, but the Sephardic approach is to be stringent and to separate milk, and they don't eat fish and dairy together. However, most Ashkenazi people, as far as I know, they all do.
You do it?
I eat milk and cheese together. Cheese and milk and fish together. The Yozen Lox is something that's totally fine. By Ashkenazim, it's not even like by many, it's not even like something to be stringent about. By Sephardim, you can ask. You can ask to find out what. What the Persian tradition is, or what your personal tradition is, or if there's if a Sephardi really has to be machmer. I'm not sure that they really have to. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the Sephardic laws. Okay, maybe we'll stop here.
All right.
It was good.
Yeah.
See, Yosef, we got a lot of stuff done.
It's awesome.
No, from this we're gonna have like